This video explains Extract 3 of the F585 2015 stimulus material. Here we look at the introduction paragraph. I've put some notes in grey. It states that the EU has become more regionalised with regard to trade. 71% of the exports of EU member states are intra-regional. The level of economic integration is very deep in the EU. It is a monetary union for some, and at the very least a common market, and that there are other economically integrated areas which we'll look at, but the EU is probably the most integrated. And then we've got to evaluate the effect on the world economy and for the EU. Key definitions to bear in mind are the difference between intra-regional trade, that's trade within a regional trade area such as NAFTA, Mercosur or EU, or even EFTA or EEA, which is the wider non-EU European areas. So that's trade within a region, or extra-regional trade. That's the truly globalized type of trade, trade across groups. Economic integration is the process by which countries remove barriers to trade and become more interdependent within a group. What we're trying to argue with this extract is that there's been a greater regionalisation of trade. In other words, the growth of the trade within regions and the removal of barriers and integration within regions has been a more powerful force even than the overall increase in trade across the whole globe. Both have happened. Trade has increased in both extra and intra ways, as you can see when you go to Extract 4, but regionalisation is the topic of Extract 3. The extract argues that regionalisation is not surprising given the widening and deepening of integration in Europe. Let's look first at widening. This is a process known as enlargement, the addition of extra countries to the EU from the original 6 of the 1957 Treaty of Rome. Enlargement is particularly refers to the 2004 increase of 10 member states listed here. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, many of the countries of Central and Eastern Europe were suddenly allowed to join the European Union. That makes the European Union the world's largest economic area, accounting for 30% of world GDP. The newly accession countries from 2004 have had a pretty torrid time since the financial crisis. Joining the EU has given them lots of opportunities for growth, but then also problems from being integrated, such as property bubbles, rising inflation and the credit crunch. But perhaps not quite the same level of problems that the Eurozone has had. Most of these countries are not in the Eurozone. But the main focus of this extract is the deepening of regional economic integration of Europe. The EU has gone down those stages of integration from free trade area through to full political union further over the years since 1957 than any other area. This is the original intention of Jean Monnet and the framers of the European Union, that there should be ever closer union. And really the rest of Extract 3 shows the ways in which this ever closer union has been achieved. As you will recall, any level of regional economic grouping beyond that of just a simple preferential trade agreement between a couple of countries is known as a trade bloc, a regional trade agreement or area or regional economic grouping. And there are these various stages of economic integration, and the EU has gone through these stages to become very close to a complete economic union in some of its countries. Those stages are listed below: a simple free trade area, for example NAFTA, a customs union, which is a free trade area with a common external tariff. That's what the EU definitely achieves. A common market, which the EU probably achieves, which is customs union plus free movement of labour and capital, and some countries in Europe, as you know, are in the Eurozone, so they have a monetary union. The problems of the Eurozone and the Eurozone crisis have made some people feel that it's not gone far enough, that there needs to be a common fiscal policy as well as a common monetary policy, which would move us pretty much towards complete economic union, a federal country of Europe with common economic policies, both monetary and fiscal. Other trade blocs, regional economic groupings, include NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Area, which is a free trade area, Mercosur, a common market in South America, and ASEAN, which is pretty much a free trade area by now, with some sort of common preferential tariff, but working towards that. The extract then goes on to outline the main areas where integration in the EU has been greater than that of most other trade blocs. The first three are the reduction of trade barriers and the erection of a common external tariff. This then creates the conditions of a customs union, whereby there is free trade within the EU but not with countries away. This is likely to be absolutely key in the exam. The question of trade creation versus trade diversion within a customs union. So the issue here is that you get more trade because you reduce barriers between countries in the EU, trade creation, but you might divert trade away from countries outside the EU you previously successfully traded with because of the common external tariff. Whether that erecting these common external tariffs, having a customs union, is beneficial or not, whether trade creation outweighs trade diversion, depends. We have covered that previously, and there's a very, very good video that I've included on my website from someone else on how this works. This slide summarizes some of the issues that we should have gone through before about trade creation versus trade diversion. You can pause and take notes if you need to. When you look up the trade diversion argument, you'll find that if there's trade diversion, it is allocatively less efficient to become part of a customs union if you find that area 5 on your diagram is greater than area 2 and 4. Another aspect of ever closer union is the way that the EU begins to have common policies. Two big examples are the Common Agricultural Policy, a system of subsidies for European agriculture, which is a form of protectionism and prevents Europe having to import as much food as maybe the law of comparative advantage would suggest, and competition policy. This suggests that Europe can have a role in managing whether monopolies across and restrictive trade practices across Europe affect consumer welfare. When you consider free movement of labour and capital, you're considering the way in which the European Union has become a common market. Free movement of labour creates migration. That has the effect on the labour market of reducing wages, making it more flexible. You may have to evaluate the benefits and costs of migration of labour into from the enlargement of the EU. That's quite a big topic, but not to talk about now, but you should be able to analyse that with care and attention to the effects, and understanding that it ought not cause unemployment if wages are flexible. Monetary policy, of course, is a very big issue. Here we're thinking about the fact that there are countries of the EU in the Euro, 17 members of the Eurozone, and others that are fixed with the ERM2 mechanism with their exchange rate. Here, if a question comes up, you might have to talk about the benefits of fixed and floating exchange rates, and you also might have to talk about the issue of the Eurozone crisis. I've attached to the website some extra notes on that sort of thing. as a theoretical framework to whether a common currency should and will work, we considered the optimal currency area argument. It is largely because, if you look at the theory of the optimal currency area, many Eurozone countries do not meet these criteria, that we've had the Eurozone crisis. The argument from this actually could say that ever closer union is better, because a lot of these problems could be fixed potentially by common fiscal policy, federal Europe and closer union. If, for example, there could be fiscal transfers to depressed regions, then the problems of, say, the divergence of economic fortunes of the core and periphery, Germany and Greece, could be helped. So, revise, if you will, optimal currency area theory and the question of whether the Eurozone works, whether the monetary union's working, and whether to make it work better you'd actually have to go further rather than step back. Britain obviously has taken the option to stay out of the Eurozone, whereas now, with the issues with Greece and so forth, people are thinking about maybe having to go further. So, what are the advantages of greater integration within Europe? Well, if there's trade creation, that will be an advantage, increasing allocative efficiency. That would allow an increased, of course, specialisation according to comparative advantage. Also, there may be economies of scale as the European market becomes a single market. Firms can be based across Europe and have free movement of labour across there. This will all help to increase GDP and therefore employment. By making it a single market, firms compete on a level playing field without tariffs or subsidies. That increases competition, which should promote allocative efficiency. There's an argument that it might improve technical progress, especially through specialisation, trade and the flow of ideas. And of course, being a trade bloc of this size creates a lot of influence in trade negotiations at the WTO, for example, and makes Europe more powerful as a unit. Arguably, the euro becomes a more stable currency as it becomes bigger. Because it's been in crisis, this hasn't been such a strong argument. Set against that, a common market, particularly the customs union part of it, can create trade diversion effects. Also, the common market means free movement of labour and capital, and that migration can put pressure on the labour market and create tensions. Finally, and of course importantly, the logic of ever closer union includes monetary union, already a reality for many countries, and there's been a crisis in the Eurozone. Overall, this short extract could expand into quite a lot of topics, but the main question you have to ask yourself is regionalisation of trade a good thing or not? Has it been a good thing for Europe? What is regionalisation of trade? Well, we know that's closer economic integration within groups, as opposed, which is a more powerful effect and running faster in the world economy than the growth in global trade. And you have to understand what the benefits and costs of greater European integration are. And the main one to analyse, and you'll need to study and mug up on the theory of this, is trade creation versus trade diversion.